Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are in the world today, now you're on the new way where we take everything we thought we knew and weigh it again. I'm Dr. Lenny Time, Doc, as you might know me, and we are here today to talk about Stranger in a Charmed Land. It's kind of funny, it's kind of strange, but strange and charmed is a play on what the physicists named quarks. Quarks are these subatomic particles with charges of like 2/3 or minus 1/3 that coalesce in groups of three and make up atoms. Now, the problem is that we don't even have groups of two together in chemistry. Nonetheless, starting with a subatomic group of three, most people don't have their group of one intact. So, in order to get our group of one intact, let's start off by saying that we are members of the Virtually Not Alone network, and here I am, virtually alone, chatting at you. We want to know what's going on in the world of quarks. And before I do that, what I'd really like to do is I'd like to play some Pink Floyd. But this is YouTube, and this is as close to playing Pink Floyd as we're going to get. Is anybody out there? But really, quarks need to have chemistry because everything that is in an adjacent domain has at least a 50% probability of repeating the same things in the adjacent domain. So we've got a lot to unravel here. I'm Dr. Lenny Time, and we are a member of the Virtually Not Alone network, where we wonder about agency. What agency? There is no agency. So what we know is going to make our agency, and today we're going to talk about a stranger in a charmed land. I think Heinlein would be a proud boy today, but that's my best political statement that I can give you. Okay, let us go and smoke a virtual joint. And now we are ready for our physics conversation. Quarks come in 6 different colors. They are named charmed and strange, top and bottom, up and down. What do you suppose the physicists mean by naming them that way? We all know that 3-dimensional space consists of length, width, and height. And so what they are doing is they are convoluting space to make something up. And quite frankly, I'm at the point where I don't get physics anymore. Tomorrow I will bring a physicist on, and we will talk about some of the questions that I have. One of the major questions that I have is that don't quarks have to have chemistry? That's kind of an important thing. If chemistry and physics are adjacent, there has to be some overlap. I also want to discuss the concept that frequency and resonance is timeless. And as Dr. Time, I've thought a lot about time, and the time it takes to do things is much easier in a group of one than it is in a group of two or a group of more than two. but the order of natural things follows the Fibonacci sequence, and the count there is 1 to 1 to 2 to 3. And so when you get to 2, the chances of getting back to 1 are much, much greater than it is getting up to 3. But when you're at 1, you have a chance of going to 1 again or 2. And so you also could stay where you were at 1. So there's 2 options for 1 option for 2, and that might be how they get quarks to have a value of a third. But I just don't know. Why don't we call a quark back and another quark forth? Because back and forth fits more with up and down, and you could call them in and out, but top and bottom? To me, a top is a spinny thing that runs around and eventually falls over, unless you're watching a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. I mean, really? Is reality what it is? Or, I don't know. I'm really confused. And is there anybody out there? But I've come to the conclusion that they've made some fundamental changes in physics somewhere in the first half of the 20th century, and they decided to go a different route than what most of the knowledge was based on. They went into a world called quantum mechanics. And to me, mechanics are guys that work on cars, and a quantum mechanic would work on cars at a quantum scale. And, well, when you start changing scales, adjacent scales have a 50% overlap just by mathematics. 1 to 2 is 50% distance. From 2 to 3 is the other 50% distance. And so from 2, you go 50% out of the way. Either way, that's 3. But you see, a group of 2 in resonance is different than 2 groups of 1 of just people talking to each other. And the whole idea of the new way is to build stable structures at the lowest energy expenditure possible and make it work on an individual human basis. We call the concept human scale, and it's an older concept. But the thing is that nothing in the world today, that way out, huge, supersized world, actually bothers to get down to human scale. Coffee. So, Stranger in a Charmed Land is a way of looking at the energy of human scale and comparing it to the energy of chemistry scale, whereas physics scale, subatomic, is physics scale. But we're going to take some more jumps away from that. And defining our terms is real important as we use terms, because everybody has a different terminology, and the words we use mean exactly what the speaker wants them to mean, but the listener gathers the meaning that they know and understand. And if the speaker means something else by the use of a word, well, you're going to see that word misspelled. And so is anybody out there with out as HOWDT should tip you off that there's something deeper to this question that you might want to resonate with. Okay, that was the first go round. Now we're going to get to the second go round, and that's the reference in the title that we're using today, Stranger in a Charmed Land. In 1958, Robert Heinlein wrote Stranger in a Strange Land. And the idea was this man from Mars, who's not eating cars, like Blondie said, but the man from Mars comes to the world as we know it on a diplomatic mission to unite the two planets and is totally unaccustomed to our custom. And so he comes in not knowing how things work. His name is Michael J. Smith. Now, Michael Smith plays it honestly. And in the book, as he develops in character, he tries to think in context with the other things that he's learned. In reality, everybody should read this book, Stranger in a Strange Land. And the reason I subbed in charmed for strange is because this is going to be a learning environment that I am creating as a new way of looking at the world. So the New Way was a radio show from 2017 to 2019, and we had 200 episodes of irrelevance by being the characters we were playing online in Discord and broadcasting it through a radio. What I'm doing now is the pre-work for a totally new information format of presenting education in an entertainment environment by embedding a group of one, you or me, or somebody else who can handle their own group of one, and graduating them slowly into larger groups and testing the group theory on human scale. As I've said in flows before this, the idea of groups in chemistry is that group theory tells you where the atoms are in relation to each other in a molecule. And so there are dimensions of symmetry that make total sense that are explained in mathematics using matrix algebra and some derivative calculus. You don't need to know the derivative calculus. And if second graders learned matrix algebra in second grade, the world would come out with an entirely different spin than having them learn how to count, multiply, divide, and so forth. Coming soon is a book that looks at the whole way of looking at mathematics in a quantitative form and gives it an alternative qualitative form. But that book is still in the editing process and needs to be revisited before it actually makes it out to the market. But the audience here will have a good idea of what's in it before it actually makes it onto this stage. Now, using different science fiction plots as the framework for learning in the new way is just an example of how we're going to do things. The idea of being embedded in learning is that our characters will stay in character as much as possible and discuss what they are supposed to have learned in school as other characters are prompted to read between the lines and bring things in that are in no way taught in school. The younger you are, the more it will make sense. But this isn't about making cents or dollars or anything like that. However, when it comes to casting and actually providing a show, there will have to be a mechanism of exchange using balanced human scale equations analogous to balanced chemistry equations to explain the group theory of what goes on so we can get beyond the wall of what we were taught in school hey, teacher, leave those kids alone. We're going to put some new bricks into the wall. And hence, I go back to my initial comment when I first came on. Is anybody out there? Because Pink Floyd and Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land resonate with each other in a group of two. Now, I expected this presentation to actually be a group of three, but anytime you make plans, nature is going to laugh at you. And even though nature counts by Fibonacci, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, and humans count by counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at the time you get to 5, everything still looks the same. We are in an image where our role play is going to build new learning environments. And it's the theme of the book, the theme of the music, the theme of the show that is going to hold together diverse opinions on many different topics. And each of those topics is going to stand alone so that you can do your own homework. But I'm not going to give you references and tell you where to go to do your homework, or you would just be regurgitating my homework. And my homework is not for you, it's for me. That's why it's my home. And I live alone, virtually, because I live in a group of two with a normie. Now, normies have tunnel vision, and tunnel vision is one of those things that what goes in and comes out has to be at the tunnel. And they say there's always light at the end of the tunnel, but you know what? They define light with a constant called the speed of light when each different wavelength of light comes at a different frequency. And so frequency, speed, and wavelength have to be related. And it turns out there's this constant called H that is the Planck constant. And it is derived over time. Now, derivative calculus is different from integral calculus, and derive is one of those words that the meaning in mathematics is so different from the meaning in the vernacular, the way that humans normally talk, that anybody who does not speak well in English language doesn't understand the vernacular and only understands hood speak. Like, man, what did you say to make me mad this time? No. You see, it's important for you to be you, and I will be me. And when we come together in a group of two, we will resonate at a form where my vibration and your vibration resonate with each other, and that new resonance will have a lower vibration than either me or you. But we will come to a place where we've gotten our vibrations together, and if we're really on the same page, we can pick up as much as a third of a human scale person worth of resonance value, which makes it a more stable group of two and allows us to interact with each other in such a way that we learn something that each of us can take home. But we're going to learn things different. And if the compromise is truly based on coordination, where we have a consensus that the new form is better than either of the old forms, well, that consensus can now serve as a starting point for bringing in a person to make a group of 3. If you've been watching the show lately, we've been working with a group of 3 that consists of El Brujo, I Am Magic, and myself, Doc Time. And the group of 3 of us can bring in a 4th person, but since we are in natural order and resonance with our group of 3, the next number is a group of 5, and that 4th person is still on the group of 3 plateau with us. So having 3 people gets 4 persons worth of work done, and bringing in the 4th person still gets 4 persons worth of work done. And so it doesn't matter if you have 3 or 4 persons in your group, it works kind of the same way. But a group of 3 is 3 groups of 2, and a group of 4 is 6 groups of 2. And groups of 2 are when 2 of the individuals in a larger group actually have a resonance of their own when they're together. So that resonance interacts with the group. And so 2 plus 2 is not equivalent to 2 plus 1 plus 1 in the energy balance that goes to form resonance to derive the frequency of the group in question. Now, this has all been complicated, and it's all basic mathematics of group theory that if you don't quite get, you can listen to this again and chart it out on paper. You see, I always have paper with me, and I keep a pen, and I keep a spare pen. And so if somebody says something that really resonates that I didn't know, it gets written down in the book. And taking notes is going to be part of the new way, in that each individual is going to be responsible for publishing their own notes. But the publishing phase will come when we get to mind. The video phase is in sound, and my day-to-day is forming. Now, forming is a really good day for the pre-LARP because it says that I have amassed the group of characters that are going to be transparently part of the play, but actually I've got an interview process that's going to take me some time to get players placed in their right roles. And the players who are on screen are not all of the players in the cast. And different cast members will have different roles depending on what they are learning as we're building a learning environment. And this is going to cost a little bit of money. But money is going to be an exchange vibration that is not convertible into American cash. However, people can't buy groceries in America without American cash. If you're in Europe, you need Euro cash, although Euro cash is not going to be in such short order that you're going to need your francs or your guineas or your rupees or whatever type of currency you use. Currency is electricity, and electricity is physics, and physics is not in resonance with reality because the physicists have sold us a bill of goods. You're not the only ones. Look at medical doctors. No, please don't look at medical doctors. They are really one of those things that you have to question. I like Dr. Stephen Greer. Thumbs up for the work on the Disclosure Project. Thumbs up for keeping an organized sense of where things are coming. Thumbs down for trying to talk over people's heads and impress them with groupthink in a large organization when you can do it on your own and talk to individuals and let them think and have more collective thinking resonance than just you and your medical degree. Now, I have a degree. I jumped through the hoops. I went and wrote a thesis. My PhD was earned, but that's the person behind the character, Dr. Lenny Time. And Dr. Lenny Time is a character. He has to stay in character. He has to support science in every way, par ridiculous, which shows you that it doesn't work across all the sciences, and that we need some magic to go back to alchemy, which seems to be the point when they actually had it together. Coffee. In addition to coffee, I believe we need another, didn't do that right. I believe we need another virtual joint. See, I have skill in learning. I can actually manipulate my mouse to use the program StreamYard. It's very difficult. Back in the 1970s, I went to college. I learned how to party really, really good. I thank the fraternity that I was in because they gave me some sort of a group to rely on where the individual characters that were members of the group had things in common. Me, being an Aspie, didn't see what the rest of the group had in common, and the rest of the group was quite gay and used me as a front to show that a straight person can hang out with a bunch of gays, but they never told me they were gay, and I never noticed because Dr. Lenny lives in a world with blinders on and can't see things. But the party was good, the music was great, and teacher, leave those kids alone. There's a song off the wall that came out just after I had graduated and hit the wall full flung because I hadn't known anything other than academia, and what they told me had to be true. And I went some through surrealistic pillow language and hit the wall full swing and realized that everything they had told me wasn't quite true. Some of it was more true than other of it, and I had to figure it out. And so I Run. I Run is a Flock of Seagulls song, and I fully believe that literature, music, and all the historical references that we have tell stories that in the new way of interpretation will give us some meaning in a light when we recognize that the words are different. And as Lewis Carroll's Red Queen had said, words mean exactly what I think they mean. And Alice had to interpret that as words mean exactly what Alice thinks they mean, because Alice couldn't think for the Red Queen, just like Dr. Lenny here can't think for you. So as we develop bonding between our groups of one to groups of 2 or 3 or 5 on human scale, we need to be inclusive, and we need to be exclusive at the same time. So those are two ones in the Fibonacci. And if you cannot be exclusive while you're being inclusive, you're not pulling your weight. But that's okay. Nobody pulls their weight in the world. Otherwise, you would be attached to the place where the horses are. Let the horse pull the cart, but get all the items in front of the horse out of the way so that the horse can pull the cart, because you can't put the cart in front of the horse. And right now, we have a basic foundation problem in that we don't have a solid foundation of factual information to work with to put together an explanation for our reality that actually holds water. And so nothing is real, so there's nothing to get hung about. The idea that we're going to take science fiction plots, develop characters as the character in the role in that plot, with each of us as individuals behind that, adding our own spin state to it, is as good a model of chemistry as I can come up with. And it's a quite different model of chemistry than physics quarks, which need to have a chemistry that is similar, at least in 50% adjacency, if the scales are next to each other, 25% overlap if the scales are one away from each other, which means this scale, blank scale, this scale. If there's two scales in the middle, this blank blank this, then that is okay. But the two scales have to be 3.14 units apart. That's pi units apart to actually be separated so that things don't overlap at all. That's like a grain of sand to a tree. A grain of sand to a tree is 4 orders of magnitude difference. And while you and I can look and see there's a grain of sand, that tree, which doesn't have a microscope, cannot defer that there are such things as grains of sand or grains of salt or grains of anything. It doesn't have a scale that weighs in grains. But I bet you didn't know that grain is a unit of weight and that it's real important in some different circumstances. Like if you want your gold of avoirdupois, du poids, or however they say it. I don't speak French. I can butcher French. And right now, with what's going on in France, the French are doing a good job of butchering themselves. So we shall stay out of European politics, except when we want to just shake a leg at it. Okay, so if you haven't gotten this far in the book, I am going to play the cast member Jubal Hershaw as Dr. Lenny, as the scientist with the degree behind the whole concept of New Way. So it's like, I want to say the movie Insipid, but that wasn't the word. You know, the one with Leonardo da Vinci where he goes down in orders of time. Inception. That's what I needed. Inception time through the dream world gave me something to think about because I knew the concept wasn't right, but it was there. And in the movie Inception, the idea is to plant an image in somebody's mind in a dream in such a way that he thought he had come up with the solution organically. And when you were in dream world, you had to have a familiar, a little toy that would tell you if you were dreaming or if you weren't dreaming, so that you could tell whether it was you behind the you that was making the call, or whether it was your character on the level you were playing. Homework would be to go back and watch that movie again. Far be it for me to give you too much homework. And the first set of homework is acquiring the book Stranger in a Strange Land, a 1957 novel by Heinlein that is going to be the plot for the LARP, live action role play, that is the learning filter that we are going to attempt to use to experience the reality of what lies behind the narrative that is breaking down but is being gripped on by people who have no alternative because they believe the university system would not lead them astray. All right, I think I've gotten my message across, and we're still underneath a half hour. And so, to all of you out there, I'm going to thank you for listening. I want to throw a special hello there out to Chad the alcoholic, because Chad, you're doing really good work, and I want to make sure that somebody gives you some reinforcement, because I know, having walked in similar footsteps, that sometimes when you take your own path, the mask becomes a mask that you have to live behind. And when it comes to face reality, all of us wear masks. Okay, my friends, peace and goodwill. Before I take off, I want to do a little bit more branding. This show is a member of Virtually Not Alone Network. I, Dr. Lenny Time, have spent the entire show alone, so I was not virtually not alone. I was here giving you some information that allows you to decide if there's agency. If there is agency, what agency? And there is no agency, because the new way is going to weigh what we know, and we'll know it or not know it. We said that frequency is in resonance is timeless. And as Dr. Lenny Time, I want to explore this statement in more depth, because right now we're suffering from a physics that convolutes electricity and magnetism in such a way that it destroys the concept of force. And then you have some people out there who talk from a point of knowledge, trying to rectify the whole thing. And you can't make a camel drink when you've led it to water. So if the concept is fundamentally flawed, we have to look at it from a different aspect and figure out what the flaw is. The next show, which will start in the fall at equinox, will be based on Stranger in a Charmed Land. And strange and charmed are two of the quarks. And quarks are one of those things that we're going to use as a resonance point, because that's a concept that somehow has not crossed the barrier of reality, and yet is presented as 100% true in the physics halls of our high schools and universities. We got to go back to some fundamental mathematics, but they don't teach fundamental mathematics either. And so where there's a will, there's a way. Now, this concept is based on Stranger in a Strange Land, a 1950s science fiction novel by Heinlein. And Heinlein would be a proud boy today to see us doing his work. but it's also incumbent that we look at the reality that we're presented and know that every word they say is true, has a background meaning, and what we know and what we think we know are two entirely different topics. We're going to use Heinlein, we're going to use Pink Floyd, and we're going to say that 40 minutes in, we thank you all for coming. Be well, and we'll see you again another day.